Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's watch.
It's easy to point the finger from everybody that dad is doing something wrong.
Before COVID ever hit.
Sorry, this one's not going to work with me, Christine.
This does work.
Because you guys tried this.
You know what I learned in COVID? That I can do it alone. And that I can do it without you. I didn't know I could.
You know what?
Interesting. That makes total sense. I hadn't thought that. Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, at the very least, it drew a huge barrier between them because he was refusing to go to their houses, right? So it's like the longer you're without your partner and you know your partner's with someone else, it just is pretty natural to start not loving them anymore. But on the other hand, it's also like, wait, so I haven't seen him in 5 months and I'm fine. In fact, I feel better with him not here. My kids are fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. So maybe I shouldn't be married. That is kind of, and that happens. I've there's not a lot of stories that are coming to mind, but I have worked with some clients where their spouse will go out of town or they'll go out of town, and that separation gives them a chance to think a little bit more and maybe experience life, what it would be like without the person. So that's interesting. It's one of the things I want to point out is that it looks like Christine has one of my favorite books. It is Amy Poehler's memoir or book that she wrote.
I'm so effing mad about this that I'm going to just put it aside and let this go.
It's this one. I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually always right behind me. It's always like right back here. So highly recommend.
Really?
Well, I mean, you've decided to move on, and I'm sitting here going, all right.
Why would you want me to stay?
Because I'm supposed to.
You don't want to. You don't really want to.
Wow. What a moment in their lives that we get to witness, that they are allowing us to witness. She has been, this whole conversation, been very differentiated and constructive. And it led to him eventually calming down. And then it leads to her, because he seems to be trying to get her back. And then she says, why would you want me back? Genuine question. And he's like, I don't know, because I have to. What do you say?
You're going, all right.
Why would you want me to stay?
Because I'm supposed to.
Because I'm supposed to. Now, it's probably more complicated than that, but there's that element to it, right? And he looks like he's being sincere. This looks like maybe the first time he is being sincere. Maybe because he's exhausted all the other things and the facade has fallen, and he is finally just admitting it to himself. Sounds like it, kind of. Because to say that out loud, then you would stop trying to shove this narrative in everyone's face that she's abandoning him. Because he's admitting it's like, I guess I don't want it either. Maybe I never wanted it. And that's how this whole thing, started, at least my reaction to it, was him saying, I never loved you. I was never attracted to you. Which I think this might be a better way to say that, than the way he said it earlier. And that she knew that at the very least he doesn't want her, and he's admitting it, and that's great. They've had some fights in this conversation, but they've stuck in it, and they've arrived here, which is really, really good. So many breaking up, divorcing couples don't have this kind of conversation. Like I've been saying, it never goes well, but it's just a matter of how unwell it goes. And on a scale, this was, I would say, definitely above average in terms of the ratio of well to unwell. And And as a result, they arrive here where they can just admit it to themselves, to each other. She doesn't want to be it anymore, and he doesn't either. And he's trying to get her back, but not for any legitimate reason. And he's admitting that to himself and to her, which is really good for them before. Because I didn't show the clips, but they've been trying to negotiate how they're going to manage co-parenting. She wants to move back to Utah, and it sounds like she only has one kid at home, truly, the youngest. And all the other kids have all moved out, which is interesting to think about, that all the other kids have aged up. So there's just Truly. And the other kids, I think, mostly live in Utah, if not all of them. And so she naturally wants to live near her kids. And he doesn't want to lose Truly. But then you wonder, how much time have you been spending with her anyway during COVID? How much effort have you been putting into it anyway? So they're negotiating that. They didn't really get to any resolution there. But he also said something interesting of just like, okay, fine, you'll marry someone else and he'll come into the family and he'll take our money or something like that. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? What's this? What's going on here? But anyway, so he arrives here, which is very positive. He can admit that. And it's interesting for us to learn that, right?
You don't want to. You don't really want to.
I'm sorry.
2 thumbs up on that too. Yeah. His gears are turning, and she is saying this, and it would help if he could acknowledge that, and he basically is, right? Because that, so much of the frustration and the difficulty and the pain and the complicated grief that happens after a breakup like this is when everyone in your life, as you're describing it as objectively as possible, maybe even your therapist is framing it, like everyone would say to her, including me, yeah, you're right. It looks like he, at the very least, has not been in love with you and hasn't wanted to be in a relationship with you, at least for the past, 3 or 4 years or something, maybe longer, but at least that long. And you're not crazy for feeling it and being upset. You're not a princess in that way, and you are not crazy. We could start talking about gaslighting, I suppose, but let's not. You could have everyone in your life do that, but there's this huge void that can be filled if the person that you were involved with can also admit that. When they can admit it, then it just feels so much more satisfying. And so sometimes we can never achieve that or get that. Sometimes we have the wrong narrative and we've convinced everyone around us of this weird narrative. So, there's a lot of nuance and difference, but she's looking for that naturally, and he just provided it, which is great. She's like, you don't want to be with me. You don't want to be with, you don't want me. And that's the whole thing here. And then he finally is able to admit that who knows? This could all just be an act. He's on camera. But there's a strong possibility that he has not reckoned with that fact until just now. And everything they're doing and everything that Christine has been doing in this conversation, and really even just up in, everything that's been happening, has led up to him being able to admit that to himself and admit it to her, which is very healing. If they're going to move forward and be co-parents, because if they didn't have kids, they could say, peace, I'm out, never want to see you, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out the door, that kind of thing. That's the saying, right? And they can't do that, right? Because they have a lot of kids together. So, their kids together are close with a lot of his other kids, you know what I mean? So they really would benefit by having a working relationship, and this is the beginning of that. So he can admit that. He can admit it to himself and say, maybe I'm not being dumped. Maybe that's not what's happening. And does that make me a bad person? What's going on here? Does that make me a bad adherent to the religion that I'm in? Is it my fault? What happened? And how can I prevent this from happening in the future? That kind of thing. I don't know. Who knows what he'll do with this, but it's really great that he can admit that, especially to her. And then he says, I'm sorry. I don't know, but it sounds like what he's saying is, you're right. I did fall out of love with you, or I did slowly reject you starting X number of years ago. And I was doing it out of obligation for a while, maybe from the beginning. I'm sorry. Now, you would hope, if that were true, he would have a full apology that would go on for years of just like, I wish I had more self-awareness when I was starting. I was young. I thought this is what you're supposed to do. I had no nefarious intent. I was trying to just be a good boy. I was trying to make everyone happy, and we were happy for a long time. But at a certain point, that obligation, I just started to grow up, and I started realizing that maybe I deserve something more. Maybe it's even bad for the wives that I'm involved with them, because I'm just doing it out of obligation. That I don't want that. No one wants that. And I just couldn't admit it, and so I just started pushing it away. Hopefully you could say something. Maybe this is the beginning of that.
I'm sorry too.
2 thumbs up there as well. Yeah, we don't exactly know what they're apologizing for, but during a breakup, depending, a very healthy healing place is when both parties can say, I'm sorry for my side of it. Even if you believe you're only responsible for 20% of it or something, you're still sorry. You're like, I'm sorry that I did that to you, or I'm sorry I was critical, or I didn't word things in a kind way, or I pulled away, or I cheated on you, or I was grumpy, I didn't show up in the relationship, I didn't prioritize, whatever it is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You don't have to say that you wish you would have done, because maybe you had reasons. You don't have to say you're a horrible person. You don't have to say the relationship broke up because of you. If both people can meet each other and say that, and, not put into the conversation who's to blame and who should be ashamed of themselves, or who should take the blame for everything, or who was worse. You just stick to what you can talk about, and that's great. She just instinctively, she's been great in this conversation, really good. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, and if you sign up, please use the link below because it helps us out. So just recently, therapy has become somewhat mainstream. People in my field, including me, have been advocating for this for decades, so it's nice to see. But there's still progress to be made. For example, a recent study found that 26% of Americans are avoiding therapy, even though they might need it, due to a fear of judgment. This is Mental Health Awareness Month, so let's try to change that by encouraging everyone to get the help that they need. As I always say, take care of yourself, and what better way to take care of yourself than to get the therapy that you need? Well, a good option to find a therapist is at BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. They have over 30,000 therapists with a wide variety of styles, and BetterHelp makes it a lot easier to shop around because you can easily switch therapists if you need to. So, we're all better with help. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
I love Cody dearly, but this is not what I chose. His other relationships are stressing him out so much that it's not like it's really fun to have him around that much anyway. He's an angry man right now. He's really struggling, and he's really struggling with kind of what's going on.
All right, so Robin is talking about how he's over at her house a lot, and she's saying, this isn't really great for me. Maybe she's just saying that because she knows she's being criticized. But if we take her at her word, which we could imagine, and it's interesting, and it makes sense that he's not just his, I don't know what word to put to it, I don't know, distant or angry, unpleasant to be around, uncaring, mean. he's not just that way to Christine and Mary and Janelle. He's just that way, and Robin is there all the time and experiencing it firsthand. Maybe not to the degree that the others are getting occasionally, but anyway, that's what she's saying, is that he's angry a lot. At the very least, we know that he's going through a lot regarding the breakup with Christine, and even though it looked as though he was the one that caused the whole thing because he pulled out of the marriage emotionally a long time ago, but at the very least, that's a big change in his life, and it's a loss. You know, I've said this before, but when people move to a different town, even though they don't like the town that they're in and they can't wait to get to the other town, there's often a grief reaction because of the change. You know, there's a huge change, and there's uncertainty, and there's losses. At the very least, you've lost the predictability of what you used to have, even if it wasn't very great. So he arguably chose to leave Christine, and she just said, okay, so now she's gone. And you would imagine he'd be happy about that, but at the very least it's changed. So he could be grumpy from that, or there could be something else going on. I don't know. I mean, he will say that he's upset about all the COVID stuff, and I've talked about this before, that there's some evidence, some pretty strong evidence, that when, I think it was Truly that got really sick that one time, or was it another one of Christine's kids? I can't remember, but there was a big scare, and I think that Cody blames himself and also might feel blamed for almost causing or playing part in the potential death of one of his kids. And also just this fear that I mean, they showed what they were going through emotionally to some extent, but we're just seeing the surface stuff, and I think he stuffs his emotions. So he could be really, really upset about that. And that could be the only reason why he was such a tyrant when it came to the rules of COVID, because he's so scared. And that's almost always the case as a therapist that I have found when loved ones are exhibiting very strange behavior, hurtful behavior, destructive behavior. It's almost always because of something like this, where the person, when you learn, and the individual might not know consciously why they're doing it, but when you conceptualize, it makes all the sense. And the person has fear or hurt from the past that is unresolved, or just so big, it's like if you go through tremendous abuse as a young child and naturally haven't resolved that or recovered from it, and you're 35 and you're married, and you were betrayed a lot, and your partner doesn't text you back right away, and it feels like a betrayal, and you're very grumpy, and you're very upset, and you're very accusatory. Well, we've heard those stories before, and we know that happens, and the individual who's upset because their partner doesn't text them back right away doesn't know why they're upset. They feel completely justified. So there's likely, it looks like there's something like that for him.
Him and Christine, I've never seen him like this before. It's like it's including the kids, and that's getting worse for him, and he's having a very hard time.
Well, that's upsetting. So even Robin's kids are suffering from his anger and rage. It's not okay. It's
understanding what's going on here. I miss my husband. Because he's not himself.
Empty nest, or soon to be empty nest, and you just wake up one morning and you say, why am I in this marriage? Or why do I have this job? Or why am I doing this routine? Or why do I live in this town? What am I doing? How did I get here? I feel like I'm quoting a song. Yeah, the Talking Heads song. Anyway, so it could be that, but I feel bad for him. I feel bad for Robin. I feel bad for his kids. I feel bad for everyone. I guess this is another element of polygamy that is of risk, right? That if if someone else has a bad year, it only affects a certain number of people. If he has a bad year, it affects everyone. Everyone suffers.
Can't keep waiting for him to be a hands-on dad. It's not working. We've been waiting for each other for 10, 12 years now.
I just need to let it go. I don't know why it's such a struggle. It's curling my toes. I need some grief counseling or something. I don't know what's going on here with my attachment.
All right, so there has been some indication in this snippet as well that even though it looked like he was the one who decided or unconsciously neglected his relationship with Christine, and then she just decided to acknowledge that after years and then decided to leave him, even though that's it very much seems that way, and he admitted it basically, that he is suffering, that it's plaguing him, it sounds like. And that makes me think that whatever is going on, if it's depression or some kind of existential crisis for him, that this loss has compounded things for him. I don't know. There's also a possibility that he was pulling back from Christine because he was hurt. And this happens, and it's not okay, but people with avoidant attachment style, and I don't know if that's him, but he's a candidate potentially for that conceptualization, that they have a really hard time communicating directly about their hurt. They might not even know that they're hurt. And they will communicate their hurt through silent treatment and distance. In a very weird, illogical way, they are hoping that the recipient of that will interpret it as, oh, they must be pulling away and treating me like crap and giving me the silent treatment and stonewalling me because of that thing I said 3 weeks ago. Okay, duly noted, and I won't do that again, and I'll even apologize. No one ever does that because silent treatment and distance just feels like a rejection, right? It's hurtful. And tying those connections without being told, right? It's like hard to do. So there's a possibility that he really wanted to be close to Christine, but was very passively being hostile by pulling away, trying to, the whole COVID thing. It's just a lot of possibilities in terms of conceptualization. And then when she finally left, it's like, oh no, I pulled away too much. I pushed her away, and I was trying to communicate. I feel like I'm not being heard, or I don't know. But another possibility is that he's he didn't realize how much he was attached to her, and even though he knows he doesn't want to be with her, he doesn't want to be married to her, there's still that loss, right? That familiarity and that friendship isn't there anymore.
I can't let go.
That's interesting. And then another possibility is he's just saying that because he's trying to garner sympathy. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't usually wonder about shenanigans and fakery and production or cast members trying to fake something on camera. With this show, there's only some shows that look like that, like the last season of Darcy and Stacey just looked like the whole season was one big shenanigan. I don't usually think that with a show, but I'm beginning to wonder because they've even said things that seem to indicate that they're very aware of the public, of the crowd, of the fans. Sometimes I wonder when they're fighting it with each other if they're not actually fighting with the crowd, particularly him. Because he said a lot of things like, you're not a prisoner, he'll say, or, I'm not abusive. And no one said he was on the show. In fact, the sister wives will say the direct opposite often. So, I wonder, and I wouldn't be surprised if the dominant narrative online is that he's a narcissistic, abusive, psychopathic, sociopath, or whatever. And that'd be funny. I should Google psychopathic sociopath because it's nonsensical. Anyway, so he, I don't know, seems to be reacting against that because that I think we think, he's a public figure, he should be able to handle it. No one's immune to that. Everyone's human, and I can't imagine if I had 0.01% of what I'm guessing is the amount of vitriol from the fans toward him. If I experienced that would end my public career in an instant. So it has to be taking an effect, right? Unless he's very disciplined about not paying attention to it, which is possible, but it doesn't look like it to me. I say all that because I wonder if that is true, then I wonder if he is trying to fake or he's trying to emphasize his pain as some attempt to try to get sympathy from the crowd so people stop attacking him. I don't know. Because, the other part to this is that he seems to reference, I'm not quite sure, but that he wonders if his wives are actually being influenced. And you could imagine that he would think this with Mary, because the catfishing thing, I didn't see the communication, but I think it was leaked. And I think there's reason to believe that Mary was targeted by a fan, and that the dominant online narrative about the family, which is often pretty toxic well, that's a strong word, but often simple and rigid, at the very least, and, I'm not in all the forums. Maybe there's a lot of really intelligent, nuanced discourse. I'm going to take a guess to say that does happen. But anyway, that he could have seen that and wondered, oh my goodness, if the other wives start being influenced the way Mary was, then I'm going to lose everything. And I don't want that to happen, so I have to somehow get out ahead of that. And whenever I'm fighting, like, it could really make you paranoid. It's sort of like in a non-famous situation, like if you know that your partner is frequently complaining about you to one of their friends or family, and you know that friend and family member hates you, every time your partner is criticizing you, especially if you think it's unfair, you might be like, is that so-and-so or a therapist? It's like, because sometimes it happens, you'll have bad therapists that will just, like, due to their countertransference, get completely triangulated and hate, that they have a client that they like and they hate their spouse. It's a thing. And so I wonder if for him, he feels like he has to get out ahead of that for just to salvage the rest of his marriages, or he just feels like he's being unfairly attacked. I don't know. All right, well, I want to remind everyone that I am doing this thing called Kirkgrams, if you're interested. It's like Cameo, but it's through our website. You can go to the website and you can order a Kirkgram, like where I do a message for birthdays or anniversaries or whatever. It's a fun way to connect if you care to. No big deal if you don't, obviously. And in the description, you can ask me to do various, I could ask a trivia question or sing a song, or maybe try to do a little dance. I could Vogue. I'm like really excellent at I'm not. Is that even voguing? I'm pretty sure anyway. So Kirkgrams are out there. Also, there's merch, and you can get merch. I am always using these tumblers, which are really great. Take care of yourself because you deserve it. Because you deserve it. You really, really do.